When the Roman legions packed their bags and left Britannia in the early 5th century, they left behind a world in flux. The grand system of Roman currency, with its familiar gold, silver, and bronze coins, began to crumble. Imagine a world where the money you've always known simply vanishes. The Anglo-Saxons, who came to dominate the land, initially had little use for formal coinage. Their economy was built on barter, on promises, and on the exchange of goods. Yet the memory of gold, that most precious of metals, lingered. It wasn't just money. It was a symbol of power, of divine favor, and of eternal value. A little piece of the sun you could hold in your hand. Out of this monetary void, the first glimmers of a new English coinage appeared. Around the 7th century, tiny gold coins called thrimses began to be struck. These were not coins for buying your weekly groceries. Oh no, far from it. They were incredibly rare and likely served a ceremonial or high-status purpose. Think of them as the ultimate status symbol of their day. They were often imitations of Roman or Merovingian Frankish coins, showing that even in this new era, the ghost of Rome still loomed large. Owning a thrimser meant you were someone important, perhaps a king, a powerful lord, or a high-ranking churchman. It was a way of displaying wealth and authority in a world where such displays mattered enormously. These early coins were often beautiful, intricate little things, despite their small size. Some featured crude portraits of rulers, while others bore Christian symbols like the cross, reflecting the recent conversion of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. The designs were a fascinating mix of pagan heritage and new Christian faith, a snapshot of a society in transition. But their primary function was not economic in the way we understand it today. They were used for significant payments, paying fines known as a vergild or man price, sealing important legal agreements, or as diplomatic gifts to cement alliances. They were treasures, hoarded and passed down through generations, rather than spent in a bustling marketplace. The thrimses' reign, however, was brief. By the end of the 7th century, the quality of the gold in these coins had declined sharply, and they were gradually replaced by silver coins known as sciatas. Gold, it seemed, was simply too scarce and valuable to be used for currency. For the next 600 years, England would be a silver-based economy. Gold coins disappeared from circulation almost entirely, becoming the stuff of legend and buried treasure hoards. It would take a powerful king with grand ambitions and a desperate need for cash to bring gold jingling back into the pockets of the English people. The stage was set for a dramatic monetary comeback. For centuries, England got by without gold coins. Silver pennies were the workhorses of the economy, used for everything from paying taxes to buying bread. But by the 14th century, the world was changing. Trade was booming, stretching across Europe and beyond. Merchants were dealing in larger and larger sums of money, and carrying around enormous bags of silver pennies was, to put it mildly, a bit of a hassle. Imagine trying to pay for a shipment of fine wool with thousands upon thousands of tiny silver coins. There had to be a better way, a more glamorous, more efficient, and altogether more regal way. Enter King Edward III, a monarch with a flair for the dramatic and a serious need for funds. In 1344, he was deeply embroiled in the 100 Years' War with France, an incredibly expensive undertaking. He needed a high-value currency to pay his armies, to fund his campaigns, and just as importantly, to project an image of immense power and prestige. Edward decided it was time to bring gold back. His first attempt, a beautiful coin called the florin, or double leopard, was a bit of a flop. It was overvalued, and merchants were reluctant to use it. But Edward, ever persistent, was not one to give up so easily. His second attempt was a triumph. Later in 1344, he introduced a magnificent new gold coin, the noble. Valued at 6 shillings and 8 pence, it was the perfect high-denomination coin the growing economy needed. It was large, impressive, and made of high-quality gold. The design was a masterpiece of royal propaganda. It showed the king himself, standing majestically in a ship, holding a sword and a shield bearing the arms of England and France. This powerful image symbolized England's naval might and Edward's claim to the French throne. It wasn't just a coin, it was a statement. It declared to the world that England was a force to be reckoned with. The noble was an instant success. It became one of the most respected and sought-after gold coins in all of Europe, a testament to its reliable weight and purity. Merchants from Italy to the Low Countries happily accepted it in trade, cementing London's growing reputation as a major commercial hub. For the first time in over 600 years, England had a successful circulating gold currency. It oiled the wheels of international commerce and filled the king's war chests. The reintroduction of gold was not just an economic decision, it was a political masterstroke that helped define Edward III's powerful reign and set the course for English currency for centuries to come. As the medieval period gave way to the dynamic era of the Tudors, gold coins continued to be powerful symbols of the monarch's authority and piety. The noble had served its purpose well, but a new coin was about to capture the public imagination. In 1465, Edward IV introduced the angel, a truly beautiful piece of numismatic art. Its name came from its iconic design, the Archangel Michael, wings outstretched, slaying a dragon with a spear. This powerful image was not just a pretty picture, it was deeply symbolic, representing the triumph of good over evil. It was a message that the king, as God's representative on earth, was a protector of the realm against all threats. The angel had another rather fascinating function. It became the coin traditionally used in the royal ceremony of touching for the king's evil. This was a ritual where the monarch would touch people suffering from scrofula, a nasty skin disease, in the belief that the royal touch could cure them. Afterwards, the afflicted person was given a specially minted gold angel to wear as an amulet to continue the healing process. You can just imagine the power and mystique this lent to both the coin and the monarch. It turned a piece of money into a sacred object, a direct link to the divine power of the king or queen. Even Shakespeare mentions it in his play, Macbeth. The Tudor dynasty, ever masterful at public relations, embraced gold coinage with gusto. Henry VII introduced the very first sovereign in 1489. This wasn't the sovereign we know today, but a huge, magnificent presentation piece. The largest gold coin yet seen in England, it was designed purely to impress. It showed the king enthroned in full, majestic regalia, a clear and unambiguous statement of the power and stability of the new Tudor regime. Later, his son, the infamous Henry VIII, continued the tradition, though his great debasement saw the purity of gold and silver coins drastically reduced to fund his extravagant lifestyle and foreign wars. It was a financial disaster that took decades to fix. Under the Stuart kings, new denominations appeared, such as the Unite, introduced by James I to symbolize the union of the English and Scottish crowns. But it was the turmoil of the English Civil War that produced one of the most poignant coins of the era. Charles I, in desperate need of funds to pay his royalist armies, set up provincial mints around the country. These produced siege pieces, often crudely struck on scraps of silver or gold plate. These coins tell a dramatic story of a kingdom at war with itself, a tangible link to one of the most turbulent periods in British history. They are a stark reminder that coins are not just money, they are historical documents. After the chaos of the Civil War and the restoration of the monarchy with Charles II in 1660, Britain was entering a new age of scientific discovery, colonial expansion, and burgeoning global trade. The old hand-hammered coins felt increasingly archaic. A new, modern, and reliable currency was needed to fuel this ambition. The answer arrived in 1663 with the introduction of a smart new gold coin, struck by machinery for the first time. This new technology, pioneered by a Frenchman named Pierre Blondeau, produced coins that were perfectly round, uniform in weight, and featured milled edges to prevent unscrupulous people from clipping off tiny bits of precious metal. This magnificent new coin was initially valued at 20 shillings, or £1. It was nicknamed the guinea because the gold used to strike the first batches was supplied by the Africa Company, which operated along the Guinea coast of West Africa. To celebrate this, many of the early coins bore a small elephant, or an elephant and castle, below the king's portrait, marking the origin of the gold. This little symbol is a stark reminder of the coin's deep connection to Britain's expanding global trade networks, which, we must remember, were inextricably linked with the horrific transatlantic slave trade. The guinea was, quite literally, a coin of empire. The guinea's value, however, did not stay fixed at 20 shillings for long. The price of gold relative to silver fluctuated wildly throughout the late 17th and 18th centuries. For a long time, the guinea's value floated, sometimes rising as high as 30 shillings. Eventually, in 1717, the master of the mint, a certain Sir Isaac Newton, yes, the very same one who discovered gravity, formally fixed its value at 21 shillings. This quirky value of £1 and 1 shilling became deeply ingrained in British culture. It was seen as a more gentlemanly or professional sum used for pricing luxury goods, land, horses, and professional fees for doctors and lawyers. For nearly 150 years, the guinea was the king of British coins. It funded military campaigns, paid for ships laden with tea and spices, and lined the pockets of the wealthy elite. Its reliability and prestige made it an internationally recognized currency. The image of Britannia, which first appeared on copper coins, was also placed on the reverse of some guineas, personifying the nation as a powerful, seafaring ruler. The guinea represents a pivotal moment in British history, the transition from a medieval kingdom to a modern, industrial and colonial power, with a currency to match its global aspirations. The turn of the 19th century was, honestly, a period of immense upheaval. Britain had been locked in a long and punishing series of wars against revolutionary and Napoleonic France. The economic strain was enormous, and gold coins, including the venerable guinea, had all but vanished from circulation, replaced by flimsy paper banknotes. By the time Napoleon was finally defeated at Waterloo in 1815, Britain's currency was in a complete mess. The government knew that a major reform was needed to restore confidence and stability to the nation's finances. So, a grand plan was hatched, the Great Recoinage of 1816. This ambitious project aimed to completely overhaul the country's coinage. As part of this, a decision was made to replace the guinea with a new, slightly smaller gold coin that would be valued at exactly 20 shillings, or £1 sterling. This was a much more convenient denomination for everyday accounting. The name chosen for this new coin reached back into Tudor history, the sovereign. The first of these modern sovereigns was struck in 1817, and it was an object of absolute beauty and technical perfection. It was destined to become the most famous and widely recognized gold coin in the entire world. The design of this new sovereign was really a masterpiece. On the obverse was a portrait of the reigning monarch, King George III, but it was the reverse that truly captured the imagination. Instead of a boring old shield or coat of arms, the commission for the design was given to a brilliant Italian gem engraver, Benedetto Pistrucci. He created a dynamic and instantly iconic image, St. George, the patron saint of England on horseback, slaying the dragon. This dramatic neoclassical design was a complete departure from traditional coin art. It was a powerful, heroic symbol of good triumphing over evil, a perfect allegory for Britain's recent victory over Napoleonic France. The introduction of the sovereign was more than just the release of a new coin. It marked Britain's formal adoption of the gold standard. This meant that the value of the pound sterling was directly linked to a fixed amount of gold. You could, in theory, walk into the Bank of England with a £1 note and demand to exchange it for a gold sovereign. This policy created immense financial stability and confidence both at home and abroad. The sovereign, with its precise weight, purity and Pistrucci's stunning design, became the bedrock of this new economic system, a tangible symbol of British reliability and financial might. The 19th century was the era of Pax Britannica, a period of relative peace and honestly immense industrial and colonial expansion for Britain. At the heart of this global dominance was the gold sovereign. It became more than just Britain's domestic currency. It really evolved into the world's currency. Its consistent weight, a precise 7.98 grams, and high gold purity, that's 22 carat or 91.67% gold, made it trusted and accepted from the bustling ports of Hong Kong to the dusty plains of the American West. It was the international currency of choice, pretty much the 19th century equivalent of the US dollar today. To meet the colossal demand for sovereigns across its vast empire, the Royal Mint in London simply couldn't keep up. So, for the first time in its long history, it took the unprecedented step of opening branch mints overseas. The first was established in Sydney, Australia in 1855, primarily to coin the gold being discovered in the Australian gold rushes. More branches followed in Melbourne and Perth, and later in Ottawa, Canada, Bombay, India, and Pretoria, South Africa. You can tell where a sovereign was minted by a tiny letter or mint mark on the coin, usually just above the date. S for Sydney, M for Melbourne, and so on. These little letters tell the story of a truly global currency. These coins were the lifeblood of the British Empire. They paid for the construction of railways in India, financed trade in Africa, and paid the wages of soldiers and administrators across the globe. In many parts of the world, the sovereign was the only currency people truly trusted. It was often kept as a store of wealth, a safe haven in times of uncertainty. Stories abound of sovereigns being sewn into the linings of clothes or buried in gardens for safekeeping. The coin's reputation was so immense that its design was widely copied and counterfeited, which is, in a way, a backhanded compliment to its universal prestige. Holding a Victorian sovereign today is like holding a piece of that global empire in your hand. The coin passed through countless hands on every continent, witnessing the height of British power. It represents an era of unparalleled confidence when London was the financial capital of the world and the sun, as they said, never set on the British Empire. The sovereign was the small golden cog that kept the vast machinery of this global system turning. Its journey from a mint in London or Sydney to a merchant's pocket in Shanghai is a story of trade, power and the sheer, undeniable allure of gold. The golden age of the sovereign couldn't last forever. The outbreak of the First World War in 1914 marked the beginning of the end for gold coinage as everyday money. Wars are astronomically expensive, and the British government needed every ounce of gold it could get its hands on to pay for munitions, supplies, and to secure international loans. In a famous patriotic appeal, the government urged citizens to turn in their gold sovereigns in exchange for paper banknotes. The slogan, "Your country needs your gold," resonated deeply. People queued up at banks and post offices to do their bit for the war effort, exchanging their cherished gold coins for paper promises. The sovereign effectively vanished from circulation in Britain almost overnight. Although the Royal Mint continued to strike sovereigns during the war, these were not for use at home. Instead, they were used to pay for war materials from the United States and other allies, functioning as large-scale international payments between governments. The idea of using a gold coin to buy a pint of beer or a loaf of bread became a distant memory. The war forced Britain off the gold standard, severing that direct link between the pound sterling and a physical quantity of gold that had been the bedrock of the economy for a century. There was a brief, ill-fated attempt to return to the gold standard in 1925, championed by the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Winston Churchill. It was hoped this would restore Britain's financial prestige. However, the economic conditions were vastly different from those before the war. The policy proved to be a disaster, contributing to deflation, unemployment, and the general strike of 1926. Britain was forced to abandon the gold standard for good in 1931, a move that signaled the end of an entire economic philosophy. The age of gold as circulating currency was well and truly over. The last sovereign intended for circulation was struck in 1932. After that, gold coins were no longer part of the money in people's pockets. The Second World War and the subsequent decades of economic recovery cemented the role of fiat currency, money that is valuable simply because a government says it is. The sovereign, once the workhorse of a global empire, had been retired. It had transitioned from being money to being a historical artifact, a memento of a bygone era of financial certainty and imperial grandeur. Its practical, everyday use was over, but its story was about to enter a new and fascinating chapter. For many years after it disappeared from circulation, the gold sovereign lived on mainly in the memories of older generations and in the vaults of central banks. But in 1957, the story took an interesting turn. The Royal Mint began striking sovereigns again, not for circulation, but to meet a growing international demand for gold bullion coins and to combat counterfeiting. These new sovereigns, bearing the portrait of a young Queen Elizabeth II, were not intended to be spent in shops. Instead, they were created for investors and collectors, people who wanted to own gold as a tangible asset. This marked the sovereign's rebirth as a bullion coin. So what exactly is a bullion coin? It's a coin struck from a precious metal, like gold or silver, that is bought and sold for its intrinsic metal value, plus a small premium to cover the costs of minting and distribution. People buy them as a hedge against inflation or economic uncertainty. The sovereign was perfectly suited for this new role. Its history, its famous design, and its trusted purity gave it a prestige that few other coins could match. It became a popular choice for investors around the world, competing with other well-known bullion coins like the South African Krugerrand. Today, the Royal Mint strikes a new sovereign every year. They are produced to the same exacting standards as their Victorian predecessors, 7.98 grams of 22-carat gold. The classic St. George and the Dragon design remains the most common reverse, a testament to its enduring appeal. However, the Mint also releases special commemorative editions with one-off designs to mark significant royal or national events, such as a Diamond Jubilee or a royal wedding. These limited edition coins are particularly sought after by collectors who value them not just for their gold content, but also for their rarity and historical significance. This brings us to the world of numismatics, or coin collecting. Historic gold coins, from the ancient Thrimsa to the Victorian sovereign, are highly prized by collectors. Their value is determined by many factors beyond just their gold content. Rarity is key. A coin from a year with a very low mintage can be worth a fortune. Condition is also crucial. A coin in pristine, uncirculated condition is far more valuable than one that is worn and scratched. And of course, historical importance plays a huge part. Owning a coin held by a Tudor merchant or a soldier at Waterloo is to own a direct, physical link to the past. Looking back over this long and glittering history, we can see that British gold coins have played many different roles. They began as status symbols for Anglo-Saxon kings, evolved into the engines of medieval trade, became tools of royal propaganda under the Tudors, and then transformed into the bedrock of a global empire. Each coin tells a story, not just of economics, but of power, art, war, and national identity. The journey from the tiny hand-struck Thrimsa to the mass-produced, world-famous sovereign is a journey through the history of Britain itself. Let's quickly recap some of the stars of our story. The noble from 1344 was the trailblazer, the coin that brought gold back to England and showed a king in a ship ready for battle. Then came the angel from 1465, with its beautiful image of St. Michael slaying the dragon, a coin believed to hold healing powers. We then have the mighty sovereign of the Tudor era from 1489, a huge coin designed simply to project raw power. The guinea, from 1663, was the coin of empire and science, the first to be machine-made and named for the source of its African gold. And finally, the modern sovereign, from 1817, with its iconic St. George and the dragon design, became the most trusted coin in the world. The Royal Mint, the institution behind all these coins, has a history almost as long as the coins themselves, stretching back over 1,100 years. From its ancient origins in the Tower of London to its modern, high-tech facility in Llantrisant, Wales, it has been responsible for the integrity and quality of the nation's currency. Its pioneering overseas branches in places like Sydney and Ottawa were crucial in establishing the sovereign's global reach, making it a truly imperial currency. The Mint continues this legacy today, producing coins not just for Britain, but for dozens of other countries, as well as its popular bullion and commemorative issues for collectors. The story of British gold coins is far from over. While they no longer jingle in our pockets, they have found a new and enduring purpose. For investors, they are a store of value, a safe haven in uncertain times. For collectors, they are miniature works of art and priceless historical documents. They are a tangible connection to the great sweep of history, from the Dark Ages to the height of the British Empire and beyond. Whether you are captivated by the artistry, the history, or the simple, timeless allure of pure gold, these coins continue to fascinate and inspire. Their golden gleam is as bright today as it was 1,000 years ago.